lecture for week 7. Last week we started with a new theme, which is health and nutrition, and we covered the first reading lesson in it. Today we are going to read the second reading lesson in the same theme. So we are not going to explain or to launch a new theme. We are still in the same theme, which is health and nutrition. I'm just going to talk a little bit about what we covered last week. Last week we covered the theme health and nutrition, and we talked about the advantages and the advantages of the healthy food and disadvantages of junk food, and we also explained the advantages and disadvantages essay. Our second lesson for this week is Life Under a Microscope. It talks about viruses. You know that nowadays there are a lot of viruses that are attacking humans and also animals. The latest virus was coronavirus. We all know what is coronavirus. So today we are going to talk more about viruses and about these tiny creatures and how they can be really dangerous on our health and our lives. The lesson is very short for this week. It's not very long, so we are going to start reading the lesson, explaining it, and explaining each paragraph. Okay, our lesson is going to be mainly about viruses in general and about a virus who killed children all over the world, which is the rotavirus. So the rotavirus, the cause of 500,000 deaths of children each year, can be fatal, can be deadly, can be dangerous. Rotavirus is a very dangerous virus. We have all been sick because of viruses. All of us become very sick because of viruses. They cause colds and flu. Viruses cause chickenpox, AIDS, and even some kinds of cancer. Humans aren't the only ones who get sick from viruses. Some viruses also infect plants and animals, as we said at the beginning of the lecture. There are even viruses that infect bacteria. Would you believe that viruses aren't even alive? A virus is so small and so simple that it cannot even be considered a living thing. So viruses are very small, they cannot be seen, and they are not even considered as living things. A virus is not even a cell. How can something so simple, it's not a cell, it's not it's very small, how can it be so dangerous? Viruses can turn an organism against itself. It means your body will start fighting your own body also. A virus is a small package of genetic material. It cannot move on its own. It cannot reproduce on its own. A virus cannot do anything on its own. It must have a living cell to do all its work. So viruses cannot do anything on their own. A virus attaches to a cell. So it attaches to a cell, it catches a cell, and it finds a way to get its genetic material into a cell. The virus's genetic materials let the virus take control of the cell. It turns the cell into a virus factory. So the cell starts producing these viruses. The cell stops doing its normal work and begins making copies of this virus which infected you. So at some point, the cell bursts open and releases the viruses that it has been making. These viruses can now infect more cells. Those cells will make even more viruses. What can we do if a virus infects us? Let's see. The bad news is that there isn't a lot that you can do in case of a virus. So if you have a bacterial infection, you can use antibiotics. Okay, so the bacteria is different than a virus. There is nothing that helps us when we are infected with viruses other than the vaccines. Okay, but if it's a bacterial infection, you can take antibiotics. Those won't help if you have a virus. Your body has to fight the virus on its own. There are some drugs that you can take to help make it harder for the virus to reproduce, but they do not get rid of the virus. This is a fight your body has to finish on its own. So when you are infected with bacterial infections, you can use antibiotics, for example, but when you have a certain virus, your body should fight this virus on its own. So this is a fight that your body has to finish. Let's start with the comprehension questions. The comprehension questions, the first question says, how the first paragraph or the caption is eye-catching. It's eye-catching because it's talking about rotavirus and it's using statistical facts and numbers that 500,000 kids or children die every year due to rotavirus. Skim paragraph 2 to spot out the viruses of humans, plants, and animals. Does the virus, in this question they are asking you to say, how do viruses affect humans? It affects humans by attaching to a cell, and the cell will reproduce more viruses. It affects animals also, same point as humans, and plants. Plants might wither, might die due to viruses. Why aren't viruses considered to be alive? Why? They said in the text they are considered not to be alive because they are very small creatures, they cannot be seen, so that's why they're not considered a living thing. Can viruses perform on its own? No, we said that in the text. It cannot perform on its own. A virus attaches to a certain cell in your body, and this cell will start reproducing more viruses and infects your body. How do viruses increase dramatically in number? We said they increase when they attach to a certain living cell, and this cell starts producing more viruses. What is one basic difference between bacterial and viral infection? We said that a bacterial infection is an infection that can be healed by antibiotics, while viral infections are infections that should be healed by your own body. So your own body has to fight these infections. Number 7 is an opinion question, so we're not going to solve it. And exercises B and C are from the text, so we are going to solve them later on in the answer sheet. If you want the answers of the questions that we've already started with, these are the answers of the whole exercise, all the exercises. If the verb ends with Y, there are 2 rules. The first rule, if the verb ends with a consonant and then Y, we have to cross the Y and add IES. And when the verb ends with a vowel letter and then Y, we just add S to the verb. Now let's move to the verbs that end with O, SH, SS, CH, X, and Z, like go, brush, mix, watch. All of these verbs, we add to them ES in order to change them to the present simple tense. And if the verb, present simple used with I, command the verb stays in its base form or in its root form. Now, what are some time expressions that are used in the present simple? Yani, how do I know that I have to use the present simple? I know from the time expressions or the adverbs of frequency, such as every day, every week, every month, in the afternoon, often, every morning, in the evening, never, always, usually, rarely, sometimes, once a week, once a month, once a year, every summer, every winter, and so on. Let's now move to the affirmative, negative, and interrogative. The affirmative is the positive form of the sentence, the negative is the opposite form, and the interrogative is the question form. So when I say I ride my bike, in the negative means we say I do not ride my bike, and I start my question with do. So do I ride my bike? If I said he rides his bike, in the negative form it becomes he doesn't ride his bike, and in the interrogative it becomes does he ride his bike? In the affirmative form, if the subject is in the plural, like they ride their bike, in the negative I have to say they don't ride their bike, not doesn't, because the subject or the doer of the action is plural, and I use the same word as the first one, do they ride their bike? These are some of the exercises. Let's solve them together. Put the verbs between brackets in the present simple tense. The plane arrive at 6:30. So the plane is a is a singular subject. So the plane arrives. I will phone you when he is a simple subject. So when he comes home back. Unless we is a plural subject. So unless we start. The sun rises in the east. The next term begins on Monday. She is an engineer. They are our relatives. When does the train departs? I say depart, not departs, because there is does. When there is does, I do not add s to the verb. Let's wait till he finishes, because we have he. Please ring me up as soon as he arrives. Let's move to the affirmative, negative, and interrogative. Paul and Mark come back home together. Paul and Mark are plural subjects, so Paul and Mark do not come back home together. In the interrogative form, do Paul and Mark come back home together? Mrs. Davis doesn't work in an office. So the affirmative form is Mrs. Davis works in an office. Interrogative form, does Mrs. Davis work in an office? The interrogative form here is, do you usually solve your homework after school? In the affirmative, you usually solve your homework after school. In the negative, you don't usually, or you usually don't solve your homework after school. Both ways, it's correct. Now let's move to the writing part. In the writing this time, we are going to talk about the compare-contrast essay. How do we compare and contrast? A comparison contrast essay is an essay in which the writer states the similarities and the differences between two places, two items, two situations, two things, two people, and so on. In compare and contrast essay, you might write an outline or use something called a Venn diagram. This is the Venn diagram. You write the similarities here and the differences by the side. Let's start with the sample essay. Let's read the prompt first. Food satisfies you for a minute. Being fit satisfies you forever. In a well-organized expository essay, explain 3 differences between healthy food and junk food. So in this essay, we have to talk about 3 differences between healthy food and junk food. لأنه قالوا 3 differences, so we have to write 3 body paragraphs. Healthy food versus junk food is the title. We have to start with the hook. Processed and junk food lovers, be aware. This is a hook. And now we are going to start reading the essay. Junk food is typically low in nutrients and high in calories from added sugars, starch, and fats. Undoubtedly, junk food can have negative effects on children's health. Healthy food and junk food are 2 contrasting dietary choices with significant impacts on our overall health and well-being. This is the thesis, and in the thesis, they are explaining that they are going to talk about the differences between healthy food and junk food in the body paragraph. In the first paragraph, they are explaining that healthy food and junk food are different in nutrients, in vitamins, in minerals, in fibers, and antioxidants. In the second body paragraph, they are talking about how to consume a healthy balanced diet. And in the third, they are talking about fibers, which are very important to our body. In the conclusion, as you all know, we restate the thesis using different words and we write the concluding sentence.